Imagine standing in an ancient tomb, 4,000 years after its last inhabitant passed away. Your flashlight catches the glint of a golden death mask, concealing chilling secrets that would shock those who made it. As you reach out to feel the wrappings of a young pharaoh, a grim realization hits you. This boy didn't die from an illness or an accident. He died because of the twisted family tree he was born into. His parents were siblings, and so were his grandparents and great-grandparents. Every breath he took felt like a battle against the genetic poison coursing through him. Picture growing up as a living god, but facing daily betrayal from your own body. Your spine aches and your jaw feels off. At just 16, you rely on a walking stick. The palace staff murmur about a curse haunting your family. You might not grasp genetics, but deep down, you sense something's very wrong with your bloodline. Your parents and grandparents all think that keeping your bloodline pure is worth any sacrifice. They witness your pain and call it a blessing, while kids die young and they praise some divine plan. They've turned life into a nightmare and call it paradise. But what if I told you this isn't just a story? The most powerful people in history, like the Pharaohs of ancient Egypt, spent 3,000 years slowly ruining themselves by isolating their genes. They thought their blood was sacred, too noble to mingle with ordinary people. So they built a place of human suffering that would resonate through time. Before we dive into these golden tombs to discover the truth about Egypt's most tragic rulers, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. We're about to embark on a journey through 3,000 years of pain together. It's amazing that people from all over the globe can experience these ancient tragedies together. To grasp how the mightiest figures in history fell victim to their own actions, we need to go back to the dawn of Egyptian civilization. The pharaohs didn't intend to bring about their own downfall. They believed they were safeguarding something divine. They thought their blood was special, almost divine, a sacred gift from the gods that shouldn't mix with ordinary people. Imagine the first pharaoh deciding that his sister was the only one fit to share his bed. He gazed at his subjects, farmers, craftsmen, everyday folks, and felt disgust at the idea of his divine lineage mingling with their common blood. The priests nodded in agreement, while the advisors figured out the political gains. Yet, no one thought about the toll on his children. At that moment, everything seemed perfect. Pharaohs were more than just rulers. They were living gods, the earthly form of Horus and descendants of Ra. How could a god marry a mere mortal? How could their divine blood mix with human frailty? For everyone in the palace, the answer was clear. Gods are meant to marry other gods, and brothers should wed their sisters to keep the bloodline pure. What started as a religious belief turned into a cultural fixation. Egyptian royals were raised to think that marrying within the family was not just normal, but essential. They believed their bloodline held the very essence of the sun god, Ra. They believed that mixing their blood with outsiders would provoke the gods and bring disaster to the kingdom. For generations, they forced their children to endure suffering for traditions they never questioned. Marrying siblings was like tainting a well. At first, it seemed harmless, maybe just a minor jaw issue or some quirky facial traits. The priests saw these signs as a sign of the gods' blessing on the union. Yet, over time, genetic damage piled up like silt in the Nile, gradually poisoning the bloodline's foundation. What began as divine protection turned into a slow, systematic decline, so gradual that no one noticed the danger until it was too late. A royal baby is born with a clubfoot, seen as a blessing from the gods. This prince, destined for greatness, tragically dies at just 20, called to fulfill a higher purpose in the afterlife. Meanwhile, A princess struggles with infertility, yet her situation is viewed as a sign of her spiritual significance. Every genetic flaw is reimagined as divine intention, and signs of inbreeding become proof of divine favor. The Egyptians had a remarkable way of reshaping their narratives. They constructed pyramids that still impress us today, developed groundbreaking mathematics that baffles modern scholars, and created one of the earliest written languages. Yet, they turned a blind eye to the turmoil within their royal families. Court physicians recorded unusual illnesses and untimely deaths, but failed to link them to the clear cause. Despite centuries of evidence hidden in royal tombs, their faith blinded them to the obvious truth right in front of them. A genetic time bomb was quietly ticking away in every palace nursery, every royal marriage, and with every prayer for the preservation of their divine bloodline. They believed that by clinging to their godlike status, they could protect it, but this only revealed their humanity in the most heartbreaking way. Nowhere was this tragedy clearer than in the royal family, a lineage that would send shockwaves through Egypt. In the blistering heat of the 14th century BCE, a dynasty pushed royal inbreeding to shocking extremes, leaving a lasting mark on history. This story unfolds with one of the most unsettling characters in Egyptian history. In the scorching heat of 1353 BCE, a child is born in a palace by the Nile, destined to become one of the most controversial pharaohs ever. Before Akhenaten transforms into the heretic king who turns his back on Egypt's gods, he's just a boy struggling with a body that doesn't match his grand ambitions. His skull is stretched out like taffy, and his hips are wide, almost feminine. Despite the royal attire, his chest betrays him with visible breasts. The young prince navigates a world of servants who look away and courtiers who choose their words carefully. Everyone notices something's off with the future pharaoh, yet no one is brave enough to say it aloud. As he gazes into the polished bronze, he sees a face that doesn't resemble the godlike kings in the temple art. His gait is clumsy, and his voice sounds odd to others. The other children, if you can call Pharaoh's offspring children, watch him with a mix of fear and pity. The palace feels like a stage for hushed whispers and sidelong glances, while the servants have learned to ignore his unusual appearance. Priests spin intricate tales to justify why their future god-king doesn't resemble the divine statues in the temples. His parents, who come from a long line of sibling marriages, notice his deformities and convince themselves these are signs of special divine blessing. After all, the gods have their own mysterious ways. When the prince ascends to the throne as pharaoh, he takes a bold step by instructing artists to depict the royal family in a realistic way. For the first time in Egyptian history, royal art showcases elongated skulls, bulging bellies, and unusual proportions. While historians hail it as an artistic revolution, the reality behind it is both simpler and more tragic. The young king is fed up with pretending. If his body is a temple for the gods, then those gods should resemble him. The artwork from his reign is unsettling, depicting a family that seems otherworldly. With their long heads and curvy male figures, even the kids share those eerie proportions. Today's viewers might see these as artistic choices, but they're actually evidence of serious genetic damage that even royal propaganda couldn't conceal. The heretic pharaoh marries Nefertiti, and they have 6 daughters together. Court records suggest they had sons too, but these infants didn't survive, unable to cope with the heavy genetic legacy inherited from their ancestors. The king's daughters share the same elongated features and odd proportions. While palace artists depict them as divine beauties, the servants gossip about how they shy away from sunlight and struggle with everyday tasks. Maybe the king's shift from Egypt's traditional gods to a single deity stems from a deep-seated desperation. Maybe a new god will show mercy if the old ones have cursed his bloodline. He shifts the capital from a city of thieves to Amana, breaking away from centuries of tradition. Now, he claims to be the only one who can interpret divine will, the sole link between the god Tenen and humanity. But even a new god can't change the fact that his bloodline is tainted from generations of misfortune. Relocating to a new capital in the desert turns into a game of royal isolation. This new center is miles away from Egypt's traditional power hubs. The royal family, cut off from the outside world, creates art that highlights their own flaws while insisting they embody divine perfection. Tragically, the visionary pharaoh dies young, a fate that befalls many in his lineage. His religious revolution fades away with him, left behind by successors eager to revert to old traditions. The new capital lies empty, its structures decaying in the relentless desert heat. His name is erased from monuments, and his legacy is rejected by the very priests he defied. Yet the genetic fallout lingers, a curse handed down to a boy destined to be even more renowned for his tragic legacy. The son of this heretic king is set to inherit more than just a throne. He's burdened with a legacy of genetic flaws that will make every breath a challenge. Born in 1341 BCE, Tutankhamun arrives already marked by his father's curse, destined to become Egypt's most tragic ruler. Picture a 9-year-old boy trying to walk while palace servants act like they don't see him stumble. The young king's left foot twists inward, a condition known today as clubfoot, turning each step into a struggle. His spine is curved, forcing him into uncomfortable positions that make sitting on the golden throne and even exercising a painful challenge. His chest is deformed, making it hard to breathe in the sweltering Egyptian heat. Palace doctors are always nearby, but their remedies and prayers can't mend what genetics has damaged. It's a cruel twist for the young pharaoh, adored as a living god, yet he battles his failing body every day. People bow down to a teenager who relies on walking sticks just to move around. Religious rituals meant to display divine power end up revealing hidden fragility. While priests sing praises of the pharaoh's might, servants quietly set up supports to keep their god-king standing. Ancient court records, uncovered thousands of years later, tell a touching story of royal medical care. In the young ruler's tomb, over 130 walking sticks are laid to rest. Instead of representing divine power, they're desperate crutches for a frail body struggling to stand. Some are plain canes, while others shine as ornate golden staffs, yet they all share a common goal: to help a crippled god-king uphold the facade of flawless divinity. The divine child lives a life of golden isolation, wrapped in luxury but lacking real human connection. Other kids are kept at a distance, both to protect him and to shield his condition from curious onlookers. His wife, Ankhemun, is also his half-sister, sharing the same genetic issues that make their marriage not only incestuous, but also likely to lead to troubled children. Every time they try to have kids, it ends in heartbreak, miscarriages and stillbirths. Tiny mummies lie buried alongside them, silent symbols of genetic struggles. The emotional pain for Egypt's tragic prince is unimaginable. Growing up among temple walls adorned with images of strong, flawless pharaohs, he can't help but question why he looks so different from them. Court artists have an impossible job. How do you make a genetic disaster look divine? They skip realism and instead craft stylized portraits that hardly resemble the fragile boy on the throne. Meanwhile, palace doctors meticulously track the pharaoh's condition, producing what modern scientists now see as the first detailed study of inbreeding effects. They're recording his bone deformities, immune issues, and hormonal problems. They observe how often he gets sick, how slowly he heals from even small cuts, and his battle to gain weight, despite having plenty of food. What they fail to grasp is that all of this is just the consequence of centuries of genetic isolation. At 19, the young king's immune system gives out. A mild case of malaria, usually harmless to healthy people, turns deadly for him due to genetic flaws. As he lies feverish in his golden palace, he may grasp something his doctors don't. His suffering wasn't fate. It stemmed from choices made by ancestors who prioritized political ideals over human well-being. The young pharaoh dies early and is quickly laid to rest, lost to history, until Howard Carter uncovers his tomb in 1922. Ironically, the genetic flaws that caused his pain also brought him lasting fame. His untimely death kept his tomb untouched from modern archaeologists. In 2010, DNA analysis uncovered the truth that his court physicians had recorded but couldn't grasp. He was the result of sibling incest, a casualty of royal policies that viewed people as mere tools for political gain. You'd think Tutankhamun's death would have shown Egypt the dangers of genetic isolation. You'd hope that seeing such a clear disaster would make future leaders reconsider marrying their siblings. But when it comes to power, people often overlook uncomfortable truths. The tale of how the pull of pure bloodlines can overshadow the risks they bring. Tutankhamun's death is just the beginning. His story stretches through centuries and empires, witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations. Fast forward 12,200 years to the twilight of Egyptian independence, where foreign conquerors gaze upon the same temple walls that once inspired Akhenaten's lineage. They read the same religious texts that endorsed royal inbreeding and, shockingly, choose to repeat the deadly cycle that has already claimed countless lives. When Alexander the Great's empire fell apart, his general Tali took control of Egypt as his trophy. This happened 200 years after the tragic death of Tutankhamun. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, Tali made a disastrous choice that changed the course of history. Amidst the grand Egyptian temples showcasing divine pharaohs wed to their sisters, the Macedonian conqueror thinks he's uncovered the key to power. Little does he know, he's on the brink of repeating Egypt's biggest genetic blunder. The rulers aren't true Egyptians. They're Macedonian Greeks who see themselves as better than the very people they govern. They're savvy politicians who know that Egyptians want their pharaohs to uphold divine traditions. So, the dynasty's founder sets up a system where brothers marry sisters, leading to an extreme case of royal inbreeding. Just imagine the palace conversations as each new generation of royal kids grew up understanding their destiny. Siblings grew up together, playing and bonding, only to be thrust into marriage as teenagers. The psychological nightmare of this system is unimaginable. These weren't far-off arranged marriages with strangers. They were family ties warped into breeding contracts. For 300 years, Macedonian rulers mastered the technique of genetic isolation. The family tree turns into a bizarre ladder, with names echoing through generations. The founder ties the knot with his sister, and their son follows suit, marrying his own sister. This pattern continues, creating an unchanging cycle. By the time the dynasty wraps up, the royal bloodline is so intertwined that family members are cousins, siblings, parents, and children all at once, caught in a confusing web of relationships. When the legendary queen arrives in 69 BCE, the experiment has already been going on for 250 years, and her family history reveals a chilling pattern. The same names pop up repeatedly as brothers wed their sisters in a never-ending loop. Royal heirs marry within their ranks, and their children follow suit, trapped in the cycle that the Macedonians adopted from ancient Egyptian customs. The idea of the last pharaoh as a stunning beauty is likely just a myth. After 250 years of intense inbreeding, she probably had the same striking features and potential jaw issues that were common among her royal ancestors. It's the kind of genetic baggage that royal propaganda tried hard to hide. Cleopatra's beauty was probably more about her political savvy than her looks. What truly set Egypt's last queen apart was her sharp intellect, a rare gift that thrived despite her family's troubled genetics. She was fluent in 9 languages, had a solid grasp of math and philosophy, and deftly maneuvered through the dangerous politics of the crumbling Roman Republic, impressing even the most capable leaders. Her brilliance was her way of overcoming the physical limitations of her heritage. The famous queen's ties to Julius Caesar and Mark Antony went beyond politics. They were her lifelines. She urgently needed fresh blood to heal her troubled lineage. Her children with these Roman leaders symbolized hope, a chance to break the destructive cycle that had plagued her family for generations. Roman politics turned out to be far more ruthless than Egyptian genetics. Octavian, who would become Augustus, couldn't let any rivals live. He systematically eliminated Caesar and Antony's royal children, healthier and stronger than any in generations. With their deaths, the last chance for genetic redemption vanished. When the last ruler opts for suicide instead of being captured by the Romans in 30 BCE, she doesn't just end her own life, she also brings a 250-year cycle of destruction to a close. Legend has it that her death by snake bite is almost a mercy compared to the gradual genetic decline that plagued her family for generations. She dies as the final pharaoh, her body bearing the weight of centuries of genetic damage from sibling marriages. It's a heartbreaking twist of fate. The foreign conquerors took Egypt by force, but in a surprising turn, Egypt ended up changing them at a genetic level. They arrived as rulers, trying to dominate a subjugated people, yet ultimately doomed themselves by embracing the same practices that had led to the downfall of those before them. The trend of royal inbreeding wasn't just a thing for the well-known dynasties. Archaeological finds show that in ancient Egypt, it happened in cycles. There were times of intense genetic isolation, followed by a mix of outside marriages that introduced new genes. Eventually, as political pressures increased, they slipped back into inbreeding again. Egyptian history reveals a chilling pattern that has played out for thousands of years. As a dynasty rises to power, it often becomes protective of its lineage, shunning outsiders. This obsession with preserving their bloodline leads to genetic nationalism, which ultimately contributes to their downfall. The signs of this inbreeding are evident in the royal tombs, where countless mummies display the damaging effects of such practices. Even in the earliest days of Egypt, some pharaohs married their siblings. Tomb inscriptions and royal family trees from the Pyramid era show this practice, though it wasn't as common as in later times. Bit by bit, through each marriage and burial, they were unknowingly setting the stage for future genetic troubles. After the Old Kingdom fell, pharaohs in the Middle Kingdom started marrying foreign princesses, which mixed up the royal bloodlines. For a while, sibling marriages became rare, and as a result, royal kids from this time show fewer signs of genetic issues in their mummies. Egypt thrived politically, and its royal lineage bounced back. However, with power came arrogance, and success led to genetic nationalism. By the time of the New Kingdom, pharaohs like Akhenaten's family had fallen back into extreme inbreeding. The Amarna period showcases one of the most intense examples of sibling marriages, even more than those seen in the later Ptolemaic dynasty. The art from this time, with its elongated skulls and odd proportions, shows us real-time genetic issues. After the fall of Amarna, later dynasties sought foreign marriages to strengthen political ties. For centuries, Egyptian pharaohs wed Nubian, Libyan, and Near Eastern royals, boosting genetic diversity and stabilizing their dynasties. The royal mummies from this era reveal stronger bones, longer lives, and fewer deformities. However, when the Ptolemies came along, they introduced an intense fixation on bloodline purity, marking the last and most severe phase of Egypt's genetic decline. Each cycle repeated the same harsh lesson. Genetic diversity is a source of strength, while isolation leads to downfall. Yet, every new dynasty in Egypt seemed fated to repeat the errors of the past, almost as if ruling the nation came with a compulsion for genetic self-destruction. These weren't just political blunders. They were heartbreaking human dramas unfolding in royal bedrooms and nurseries. To grasp the reality of their genetic struggles, let's picture their daily lives. Modern genetics sheds light on their conditions, but the human experience is timeless and deeply affecting. Imagine waking up in a stunning palace of gold and marble, with servants treating you like a god, yet your spine aches with pain long before your feet hit the ground. Eating breakfast feels like a workout for your jaw, and each breath is a struggle with a chest that never quite developed right. You carry the weight of godly worries, yet your body keeps reminding you of your fragility, more delicate than the poorest peasant toiling beyond your palace walls. Royalty learn from a young age that they're special, but the reason behind it all remains a mystery. They couldn't connect with regular kids or build real friendships, trapped in the gilded cage of their family legacy. Their only friends were siblings, sharing the same struggles, cousins who'd turn into spouses, and relatives who mirrored their own flaws like funhouse mirrors. Picture growing up in a world where everyone you care about seems out of place, and you feel that way too, yet no one can tell you why. This divine status brought its own kind of mental anguish. These kids lived in grand palaces, but they were trapped by their own genetics. They had the best food available, but their misshapen jaws turned every meal into a struggle. They had vast libraries of scrolls, yet many faced learning challenges linked to inbreeding. Surrounded by opulence, they soon realized that wealth couldn't mend crooked bones or heal hearts straining to pump blood through faulty vessels. As they matured, the royal children started to see the troubling pattern unfold. They looked at portraits of their ancestors and spotted the familiar features: elongated skulls, jutting jaws, and odd proportions that defined their lineage. They also noted that royal infants tended to die more frequently than those of commoners. It hit them that their divine bloodline was more of a curse, yet the demands of religion and politics forced them to continue this legacy with their own kids. For royal women, each pregnancy was a risky bet with death. Would the baby make it? Would it thrive past the first year? Would it be so deformed that even the royal spin couldn't disguise it? Palace records reveal the heavy emotional burden. Many royal mothers withdrew from public life after facing several heartbreaking losses. Queens who turned their backs on religious ceremonies sought solace in wine and opium, trying to cope with the heartbreak of losing their children. Today, modern genetics sheds light on what was once a mystery. When siblings have kids together, there's a 25% chance their offspring will inherit 2 copies of a recessive gene. In a healthy population with diverse genetics, harmful recessive genes are rare because they're usually hidden by normal genes from unrelated parents. However, when siblings keep marrying each other over generations, those harmful genes pile up, like a debt that just keeps growing. You could see the evidence all around, in art and even in mummies. Those distinctive jaw shapes in Egyptian royal portraits weren't just for show. They reflected a harsh genetic truth. Elongated skulls and odd facial features that artists depicted as divine traits were really just genetic defects that became more noticeable with every generation of inbreeding. The hidden damage ran far deeper than anyone realized. Ancient art couldn't capture the internal struggles. Immune systems weakened to the point where minor illnesses could be deadly. Hormonal imbalances stunting growth and development, and neurological issues that shaped personalities and behaviors. The genetic harm reached every cell, every organ, every system in their bodies. With each generation of inbreeding, the royal families became increasingly fragile. Minor facial flaws evolved into serious jaw issues that made eating a struggle. What once were occasional infant losses turned into frequent pregnancy failures, leaving royal mothers heartbroken. The genetic damage piled up over time, spiraling out of control, and the families remained trapped in this cycle, unable to grasp the root of their troubles. The pharaohs believed they were maintaining divine purity, but in reality, they were running a tragic, centuries-long experiment in human genetics. Their palaces became laboratories of suffering, and the godlike rulers turned into victims of their own ideals. This heartbreaking saga wasn't just a one-time disaster. It was a recurring cycle over thousands of years. Egyptian history isn't just a tale of constant inbreeding for 3,000 years. It's more like a roller coaster of genetic isolation and recovery. In the Old Kingdom, some pharaohs even married their sisters. Then there was the Amarna period under Akhenaten, which took things to an extreme. After that, centuries of diverse marriages led to foreign rulers who created one of the most intense examples of royal inbreeding ever seen. The cycle of royal genetic decline paints a chilling picture. As dynasties gain power, they often become obsessed with keeping their bloodline pure, shunning outsiders. This political success leads to a dangerous sense of genetic nationalism, which ultimately contributes to their downfall. The proof is all around us, found in royal tombs and mummies that reveal the unmistakable marks of inbreeding damage. Even in the earliest dynasties, some pharaohs married their siblings. Tomb inscriptions and royal family trees suggest this practice started during the Pyramid era, though it wasn't as common back then. Each marriage added a layer to the genetic risks that would lead to future troubles, building up over time like the very stones of the pyramids. After the Old Kingdom fell apart, pharaohs from the Middle Kingdom began marrying foreign princesses, mixing up the royal bloodlines. For a time, sibling marriages became rare, which led to royal children showing fewer genetic issues in their mummies. As a result, the kingdom thrived politically, and the royal genetics bounced back. Power can make people arrogant, and success often leads to a sense of genetic superiority. By the time of the New Kingdom, pharaohs had taken inbreeding to an extreme level. The Amarna period stands out as a prime example of sibling marriages, even more so than those in later foreign dynasties. The art from this time, with its elongated skulls and odd proportions, vividly showcases the genetic damage happening right before our eyes. After the Amarna collapse, later dynasties began forming political alliances through foreign marriages once more. For centuries, pharaohs wed royalty from Nubia, Libya, and the Near East, boosting genetic diversity and stabilizing their dynasties. The royal mummies from this era reveal healthier bones, longer lives, and fewer deformities. When the Macedonian conquerors showed up, they brought a fixation on bloodline purity, adding a dramatic twist to this genetic saga. Each cycle revealed a crucial truth. Genetic diversity fosters strength, while isolation leads to ruin. Yet, every new dynasty ended up repeating the errors of those that came before. The end of royal inbreeding happened when science finally shed light on the real consequences. As genetic knowledge replaced old superstitions, it became clear that diversity isn't a threat, but a safeguard. Today, we understand that every harmful gene in our DNA is countered by genetic variation, a lesson ancient royals missed. When inbreeding wipes out variation, hidden genetic flaws emerge, often with devastating effects. The Pharaohs learned this the hard way, and their fate teaches us valuable lessons. Let's return to that golden tomb where our journey started. Take another look at Tutankhamun's death mask, but this time, notice the human tragedy behind the divine imagery. This was more than just art. It was a heartfelt effort to mask the boy's painful genetic legacy, where each breath felt like a battle against the weight of his ancestors' errors. If the ancient pharaohs could reach out to us through time, what wisdom would they share? Maybe the heretic king would caution us about the dangers of religious zealotry. The boy pharaoh might ask us to prioritize human health over political agendas, while the last queen could inspire us to value love over bloodlines and genetic diversity over royal pride. The insights from their mummies, revealed through modern science, tell a more compelling story than any hieroglyphics ever could. They aimed to be seen as gods, yet they ended up as humanity's key teachers on the value of genetic diversity. Their pain holds meaning if we take lessons from it. The Pharaoh's story shows us that no level of political power, religious influence, or cultural tradition can escape the fundamental rules of biology. They believed they were safeguarding something sacred, but in reality, they were ruining what they aimed to protect. Their quest for a pure bloodline turned into a genetic trap. Ironically, these rulers, obsessed with lineage, now stand as the strongest testament to the importance of genetic diversity. Scientists studying their mummies have revealed more about genetics than any textbook ever could. Their pain taught us lessons, and their suffering shaped our understanding. As we step away from their graves and back into our lives, we carry their stories in our hearts. We remember them not as untouchable rulers, but as real people who deserved so much more than what fate dealt them. Though their voices are silenced by death and time, they still carry a crucial message. Prioritize humanity over ideology, health over tradition, and love over power. From their golden tombs, they urge us to remember them and to learn from their mistakes, hoping to spare others from the same fate they couldn't escape.